Hey guys, so I wanted to talk about this Chicago Tribune article talking about plant-based and vegan. It's called There's No Meat, Eggs, or Dairy, but Don't Call Them Vegan. So they're talking about these companies that sell vegan products that don't use the word vegan in their marketing. Some, specifically Impossible Foods, actually tells restaurants that are going to be selling the Impossible Burger not to say that it's vegan on the menu. Just is another company. I have like their Caesar dressing right now and their mayo, which we use all the time. They don't say vegan anywhere on the packaging. They list Beyond Burger in this article, but I have seen they have just a V. It doesn't say vegan. I don't believe any of their packages actually say vegan, but there is a little V on some of the products. Like their new sausages, when I look on at least the front of the package, like on their website, I don't see it. But if you look at their like chicken griller strips, there's the V, and I think maybe on the Beyond Burger as well, there's like the V. But the focus is definitely not on vegan. The focus is more on plant-based and plant protein. They use that phrase a lot. And I think this makes sense, or it might make sense, kind of shifting away from vegan and maybe using phrases like plant-based. So this article focuses on this kind of distinction between vegan and plant-based. Vegan seems more focused on what's in the food rather than what's not in the food. Vegan means restriction, and not just restriction, because obviously plant-based means restriction too, but it means avoidance, right? Completely avoiding certain foods. And to a lot of people, and we know this just based on surveys, and of course anecdotes, we've all heard from tons and tons of people that they don't think this is healthy, that they think avoiding certain foods, and some people would consider them food groups, although obviously we've really shifted away, I think, from seeing meat as a food group. Now you hear protein, right? Even like the USDA there. What do they call it now? It's not the food, or is it the food plate? It was the food pyramid, now it's the food plate, right? I think even on the plate it says protein, it doesn't say meat. And of course, dairy now doesn't necessarily just mean cow's milk, it also means the non-dairy options. But anyway, a lot of people obviously think this is not balanced. They think, eating a vegan diet, avoiding these products completely is inherently unhealthy, not to mention hard to follow. I also think that vegan is more of an identity than plant-based. This is something I've talked a lot about in recent videos. Going vegan is kind of becoming a vegan, right? And it's why certain people get so upset when someone is going vegan or says that they're vegan, but they maybe have, a few chocolate bars a year. Whereas going plant-based, I don't think you're becoming a plant-based person, a plant-based eater. What would you even call that, right? I think you just eat a plant-based diet. It's like if someone is eating a Mediterranean diet or a South Beach diet or even an Atkins diet. Obviously, there are some people who do identify as Atkins or maybe paleo or something, and they act in similar ways to vegans who strongly identify as vegans. But I don't think that's the majority of people. Majority of people are just like, oh yeah, this is the diet I follow to be healthier. Now, obviously, the definition of plant-based isn't as clear as vegan, right? So you could be following a plant-based diet and you could be vegan, or you could not be. So if you look at plant-based, like the first two entries that you get is number one, the wiki, and then the next one is Forks Over Knives. And they essentially say the same thing, that a plant-based diet is focused on plants with little to no animal products. So basically you can eat some amount of animal product and still eat a plant-based diet, which makes sense just given the name plant-based. However, and the article notes this as well, on actual products, plant-based seems to mean vegan, right? It seems to mean no animal products whatsoever. I can't think of one example where I've seen something with plant-based. Maybe a supplement. I think I saw a supplement that said plant-based, and it was like the first ingredient was either pea protein or soy protein, and then it also had whey. So now that I think about it, I think I have seen maybe like one example of that, but typically when it says plant-based, it is vegan. Maybe like honey or something. Maybe there's something with honey that says plant-based, but yeah, in terms of like food items, not supplements, I don't think I've ever seen something that said plant-based but had like milk in it or egg or something. But yeah, it is a problem that these things aren't really regulated and they're kind of nebulous and we don't really know what they mean. I mean, obviously, pretty much everyone knows what vegan means, but plant-based, and there are people who argue that plant-based is vegan. It does mean, no animal products whatsoever. The Plant-Based Food Association has said that they are planning on coming up with like a set definition of what plant-based means, which is probably a good idea. And it's probably good that it comes from them, right? Since they are the Plant-Based Food Association. Anyway, moving on. There is actually some evidence that people respond better to plant-based than vegan. So, unfortunately, I couldn't find access to the actual survey that's being referenced here. All of the information on it, it seems to come from a speaker, someone for Mattson, who was speaking at their plant-based food innovation, conference or whatever. So going by just what's listed here by Food Navigator, before I get into the results, because they are interesting, but I think it's important to point out that the survey does seem rather limited. So 1,163 people were surveyed online and they were asked questions like, where does the future lie and which is healthier? Now, they were given only two options. They were given the vegan option or 100% plant-based, which seems strange to me. Why would you not have more options? Why would you not have both? Why would you not have a neither, right? I mean, where does the future lie? Assuming you're not just asking people who are already interested in plant-based and already interested in vegan, which was not the point of this, so they're not. I'm assuming that at least some people are going to say, what? I don't think the future lies with either of those. So yeah, that seems like a problem. Although maybe not, because I guess then that person would want to go with whichever option seems less obnoxious to them. So maybe the fact that more people go with plant-based on every single question. Maybe the fact that probably those people would also choose plant-based is maybe telling. I don't know. Another problem, again, the options are vegan and 100% plant-based. Was it explained to everyone what 100% plant-based means? I'm assuming that it was. I mean, I'm assuming that means vegan, right? I think most people would know that, but I don't think that's something that you should assume. Anyway, the results, as I said, plant-based won by a long shot on every single question. Where does the future lie? Which is more flexible? Which tastes better? Which is healthier? So Barb Stuckey, she's the person who was presenting this at this, speaking event. She says the reason that people choose plant-based over vegan is because consumers tend to see plant-based as a positive dietary choice, whereas following a vegan diet is seen as a lifestyle associated with serious commitment, deprivation, and allegiance to a cause that defines them: animal rights, environmental activism. So that makes sense. It's what I was saying earlier. It's what lots of people have been saying, people have been speculating, but I don't know. It seems like she's kind of putting words in people's mouths. Like, did they actually ask the respondents this? There's a good chance that they did. I have no idea, but yeah, again, it would be nice if there were more information here. I'm just mentioning all this because I don't want to give too much weight to this. And obviously this is something that I agree with, right? This is something that I've been promoting for a long time, that just telling people to go vegan doesn't work because most people don't want to go vegan for various reasons. And we should be looking for other ways to convince people. So obviously this is something that I would lean toward already, right? So I'm just trying to be as unbiased here as possible. However, in context, looking at this, survey in context of the other surveys, the other evidence that we do have relating to, for instance, people's fears about going vegan, reservations, again, that vegan is hard, etc., these same sorts of things that Stuckey and others have said, I think all of this coming together makes it pretty clear that a lot of people just really don't like vegan for various reasons. And I think it makes sense to maybe default to something like plant-based instead. And also, as I've talked about recently, we have studies and internal, surveys, organizations like Mercy for Animals that they have done, Humane League. These have shown that people tend to respond better to messages like eat less meat versus messages like go vegan. And while this doesn't necessarily point to plant-based as the best message, I think taking all of this together, it does seem to point away from vegan. And obviously, these studies aren't looking at, I don't think any of them are looking at products. They're typically looking at pamphlets, videos, stuff like that are, encouraging people to change their diet, and they're looking at the different messages. They're not looking at products, right? They're not comparing a product that says vegan and a product that says vegetarian or plant-based or something like that. So they're not looking at exactly the same things. The other thing I'll say is that there is the argument that none of this matters. It doesn't really matter if a product says vegan or if a product says plant-based. If there's a person who is never going to eat a veggie burger and you put a plant-based burger in front of them, I don't think they're all of a sudden going to say, oh, I'm going to eat that. I agree that it seems really ridiculous that someone who is staunchly against veggie burgers or staunchly against buying vegan products, right? That they would then buy essentially the same product, but it says plant-based instead of vegan. It seems really ridiculous. But people are really ridiculous. Again, that survey found that 73% of respondents thought that 100% plant-based, which again, I think we would say is vegan, tastes better than vegan. What? Also, I don't think the point or the intent is to market to the I won't eat anything that's vegan crowd, which is probably about as small as the vegan crowd, right? As people who identify as vegans. The type of people who I guess have made it their identity that they just hate vegan anything. How many people are actually like that? I don't think very many. I think instead, marketers are trying to reach everyone else, right? Just kind of normal people who want to eat less meat, they want to eat less animal products, probably for health, right? But they don't like the idea of eating vegan, probably because they think that, again, it's inherently unhealthy, inherently unbalanced. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like this would be more willing to buy something that says plant-based instead of vegan without even really realizing it, right? Without even really realizing that the word vegan was such a turnoff for them. Again, people are ridiculous. Ultimately, I think we need to look at the downside. What is the downside here of calling a product or on the packaging, putting plant-based instead of vegan, or just not saying anything, just not having vegan at all. Again, if you look at the Just products, I don't believe any of them say plant-based. I was looking at my dressing the other day. It says dairy-free, it says egg-free, it says non-GMO, but it doesn't say anything about plant-based or vegan. The only potential downside I could think of is, the inevitable boycott by some vegans who are upset that their product no longer says vegan. They see it as maybe the company is compromising or kind of stepping away from their values or something like that. But okay, again, vegans are such a tiny, tiny percentage of the market. It doesn't really matter. And I think a tiny, tiny portion of vegans would even boycott in the first place. Again, no one's boycotting Just for not putting vegan on their product, are they? I know it would be different if you've said vegan and now you don't anymore. Even if you do it quietly, I'm sure some vegans would notice and maybe be upset and be worried that they're sneaking animal products into the product or something like that. But again, I think that would be the minority. Another downside, I guess, would be for vegans, having to look at the label again. But I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority, but I always look at the label on a product. I don't care if it says vegan, 100% vegan, whatever. I'm always looking at the packaging. I mean, for instance, at Trader Joe's, some of their products have the V for vegan, but not all of them. A lot of their vegan stuff does not have the V. That delicious artichoke, whatever you call it, oily, delicious goodness, that doesn't have a V on it, but it's vegan. There's lots of other stuff too, and I don't know if it's because the sugar isn't organic, so they're considering it not vegan because of that. But even just any products, again, products that have the V, I'm always looking at the ingredients just to see. And plus, I try to avoid palm oil, right? I don't buy it in my food, so I'm always looking for palm oil and stuff. And just to see, what's the major, ingredient in a food, looking at sugar, looking at protein. So yeah, to wrap this up, I fully understand why a company like Impossible Foods, Just, Beyond Burger, they definitely focus on plant-based over vegan. I can understand why they stay away from vegan. And I think I'm pretty sure there's some statements from Ethan Brown, is that his name? The CEO of Beyond Burger, just kind of talking about, and he's vegan. And he's like talking about how vegan is associated with like cults, right? Again, this kind of like intense identity thing that a lot of people just find it's a huge turnoff, right? They don't want to be associated with veganism. So yeah, I totally understand why a company would stay away from vegan and would use a term like plant-based instead, like a more neutral, even positive, really. I think a lot of people think of plant-based as positive. It's associated with health, right? I understand why they would choose something like that over vegan. If I were selling a product, I probably would too. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, that's cool. Support the channel. Patreon.com/unnaturalvegan. And I will have a new video very soon.